All right, so let's talk about Demolition Man, right?
Sure.
At the time of us recording this, it has just turned 30 years old. So yes, folks, it came out on October the 8th of 1993. 1993 was a pretty interesting year though, because not only did we get Jurassic Park and Schindler's List, but we also got this film, and we also got Last Action Hero. So yeah, it was a pretty interesting year for the action hero. Yeah. This also Last Action Hero also came out in 93, right?
And Cliffhanger, I think.
Yes, you're right.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh shit.
So, yeah, those are interesting. No, this was the height of Stallone's powers in a sense, like Rambo kind of done, and it's time for him to start, leveraging himself in some interesting species, in my opinion. And Cliffhanger is not all that great, but it was a really cool concept in my humble opinion. Like it was like, all right, you're doing the Die Hard, a cliff jumper type guy kind of thing, something. And I remember this having like it had a lot of cool shots, something in it. So it's like, okay. When did Daylight come out?
96, I think.
Oh, okay, that was a little bit. All right, no problem.
But
go ahead.
But we really should talk. But in our individual thoughts on the film, we really should bring up just how big of a deal, like just how the action hero evolved, during the early 90s, right? There was Bruce Willis, of course. There was Arnold Schwarzenegger, of course, and Terminator 2, Judgment Day, i.e. the best action film of all time, in my opinion. But films like that really pushed, Stallone and Schwarzenegger and Willis, at the absolute top, right? Seagal was there and Van Damme were there, but they were more, they were more B tier. They were more lower tier Seagal.
Right. So for me, Seagal is the worst by far. Not my question.
Easily,
like, just the slowest, the clumsiest. I know people like Under Siege, but yeah, still
was mine.
In his entire body of work, he has 5 action movies that are serviceable. That's it. Nothing. 5.
And for me, I kind of like Van Damme. Kind of. But again, he was more, they're doing the sell of him. Oh, you could do a split. All right. And they just figure out a way to put a split in the movies and he could kick people in the face. All right. Not bad.
I've never really sat down to much Van Damme.
Right.
So
I like Time Cop for it was...
I like Time Cop. I actually recommend one that kind of reminds me of this because I put it in a similar category of the action star crossover movies. Universal Soldier.
Right. Yeah, the first one.
That's a good Van Damme. It's also a good Lundgren because Lundgren gets to play a villain in that one.
Right. Then I remember enjoying his the stuff like Bloodsport, which came out a little earlier. But then I remember enjoying The Quest, which was kind of Bloodsport all over again. But still,
but that's PG-13.
Right, exactly. But stuff like that.
And Roger Moore's in it because I don't know why, but he was there.
Well, yeah. But so I don't know. The 90s action genre is an interesting transition period because it's
weird.
Until I don't know when it started, but sometime 97. This is when Jackie came across and the martial arts stuff started to come across, and the Hong Kong stuff started to come across, and started to bleed in a little bit.
We actually have a couple Hong Kong filmmakers actually making American movies, like Tsui Hark, John Woo, and a couple others.
Yeah, and so it's an interesting weird period. But this movie was so strange as a product. So couple things. That I don't know if this rumor is true, but did Stallone trick? Did Schwarzenegger trick Stallone in making Stop or My Mom Will Shoot? Right.
I've heard, because what happened was what I heard is that at one point the rivalry between Schwarzenegger and Stallone was so bad that Schwarzenegger would kind of trick Stallone into making movies that he didn't want by spreading the rumor that he was interested in them.
Right.
So that Stallone would then try to race in and get them, and then Schwarzenegger would just step back and laugh his ass off.
Right.
Which is why Stallone had kind of a rough late 90s into the 2000s.
Right. But it's so interesting to watch how this project is like that, where it is so unlike a Stallone movie. In terms of this is more comparable to something like, again, I've compared this movie to RoboCop, and I don't think it's I don't think it's as good as the genius that is the first RoboCop, but it's there. It's there. It's like it doing something right. Not as good as RoboCop, but just there. It does a lot. I think it does a lot right. It tries a little too hard with its stuff. Especially when Dennis Miller comes through. But this movie is interesting. Like,
wait, Dennis Miller or Dennis Leary?
Dennis Leary? Oh, sorry, yeah, Dennis Leary. Sorry, I'm confusing you. Larry, well, he has two fast-talking comedians. I'm confusing my snarky 90s fast-talking comedians, right? But yeah, Dennis Leary. Yeah, thanks for that correction. But yeah, it's one of those things that just you're doing a lot of commentary. It makes fun of a lot of modern social stuff, but then it making fun of the gentrification premise effectively. That's the main thing. Because and then some I've seen some people make the take, which I don't think is a particularly strong take, but I get why I might say this, which is it predict woke culture or whatever it is. And like, well, not really. I mean, I get why you might say that. Yeah. Why I might say that, but that's not how I see it. I just think it is a big critique of gentrification and just the idea of, we need to clean up these riffraff. And the old world is trash because it's the old world, and I need my perfect vision of suburbia effectively, and so on and so forth. And yeah, it plays that conceit so well. Yeah, and the villain is pretty much that. He's straight up OCP in one person, right? That's what he is. That's how it feels.
I cannot wait for us to get to the part where we discuss Wesley Snipes in this movie.
And then we get. Yeah, and then we get all of that whole plot, like the big plot involving Wesley Snipes, and the sci-fi chicanery of, well, how come Wesley Snipes more powerful than he was, and they explain all of that. And yeah, I enjoy this film for what it is. It's a movie that I give a rewatch. I was like, it's a lot smarter than I remember. And have all these little dumb jokes that becomes even more relevant now we live in a post-COVID age. So like, oh shit, all of that in it. Like, they don't touch their hands anymore. There's a funny bit with there's a funny bit with where Sandra Bullock talks about the first there was AIDS, and then she just like list off a bunch of like diseases that even like, worse than AIDS somehow.
I think NHC was one or something like that. Yeah.
Right. And all the little things. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was about to say the world, like, and it's this whole explanation for like, and this is why we don't have like actual full contact sex anymore because all this other stuff, and it's like, You're
right. And it's only the physical contact. Right. And it's all these little things, like, well, we could get into that. You listen to the oldies. Like, why does they listen to the oldies? That is a period that is long before anything that they know as entertainment. Bill Cobb is in this. He's pretty good. Like, I like Bill Cobb. I always make the joke that when I talking to my younger cousins, I feel like Bill Cobb in this movie, because I think we were talking about something. Oh, next year there's a documentary on Freaknik coming out. If you know what Freaknik is, black men my age gonna totally feel like Bill Cobb because they're like, yeah, it was that and it was fucking gross. But when we talked about when they did Woodstock '99. I was like, that happened. That was like a fucking thing. It was weird, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I so far get two tickets for the swearing word thing, and I'm gonna get a few more because that's the future we live in now, right? But yeah, I it's a movie that I really liked and appreciated for the sci-fi elements, but also the social commentary. Again, I don't think it's as sharp as RoboCop is, but I put it almost as high as RoboCop. And I think, actually, ironically, the person who pulls it down is Stallone. Like, Stallone still had to be like an action star. And I felt if they got someone else, somebody who's similar to, what's his name? Buckaroo Banzai. I forget the actor name.
Peter Weller.
Peter Weller, right. I forget if it got somebody like a Peter Weller or somebody who could have played like a kind of deadpan kind of thing. Because the simple fact is that Stallone has no comedy chops. And why I mentioned Stop Home My Mom Will Shoot, because I remember that movie being incredibly unfunny. He has no comedy talent. He has no comedy talent whatsoever. Everybody else is good in this, right? Sandra Bullock is great in this. Benjamin Bratt, he was the other guy.
A young Benjamin.
Young Benjamin Bratt. He was funny. He was funny
in this movie. Benjamin Bratt.
Yeah, he was funny in this. Wesley Snipes was really funny in this.
Oh my god.
Everybody else was funny in this. Even Stallone, Stallone did another movie with this guy. This is what's his name from? And he's a total right-wing weirdo now. Making copies.
Yeah, Rob Schneider.
Rob Schneider. Even Rob Schneider's funny in this. Like, everybody's great in this, but Stallone is not funny in this, and he doesn't even play a good straight man either. That's the big problem I have with it. Because he's clearly trying to tell jokes.
Well, I don't know if I agree with that last part, because he's got a little bit of the... I was thinking about this because I recently rewatched Kelly's Heroes, right, with Clint Eastwood and Donald Sutherland. And what I like about comparing the two is in both cases, both Stallone and Eastwood are playing the like one stone-faced guy surrounded by like all these oddballs. And I think Stallone does have some genuinely funny moments where he's just
he
reacting to this crazy world he's in. And those are some of the funniest bits.
It have a couple of okay moments. Like, it's not bad. Like the stuff where like when he turns on the video comm TV and there's a girl just completely nude. That's a funny bit. Like little stuff like that. Or like when he said,
"Oh, wrong number."
Right. Yeah. And then it had like was one moment where he tells Benjamin Brackey, "You see any cows down here?" That's a funny bit. Not bad. Like that's
he's
like
just slowly, he
slowly realized what he's in there. Like, right. But I don't know. I find Stallone was by far the weakest link in all of this. I felt he wasn't that good of a straight man. You know, he was all right. It had a couple of moments. I didn't think he was that good as that. He was, in my opinion, the weak link. And I felt if they could have gotten somebody else, but whatever. He's a big name. He's the one to bring the attention to everybody and whatever it is. So that's about it. Yeah, go ahead.
It's what I was saying about, like, definitely he's the big name because this is that whole, and it goes back to what Matthew was saying about this being an interesting period in the history of the action movie and the action star. Because now we've had the 70s and the 80s to build up this idea of the action star. But now we're getting into the 90s. We're in the 90s. Everything is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and more stylized and more over the top, and everything is huge. So now there's nothing to do with the action stars, but have them cross over. So we had Universal Soldier with Dolph Lundgren, Jean-Claude Van Damme. We had one of my favorite movies ever, Tango and Cash with Kurt Russell and Sylvester Stallone.
Yes.
You had you have all these different. I know there's another one that I'm missing, but basically you have all these action films where part of the draw is we're having these guys. Like you're going to see. You've seen these guys by themselves, but like I think ultimately this mode kind of gets killed by of all things, the Expendables.
Well, that's the thing. I think it's recently biased, because I think I hate Expendables 4 so much that this just kind of cloud with my feeling about Stallone in perpetuity. But I don't know.
I still haven't seen it though, but no, Ricardo, you hate
I am not going to see it.
Yeah,
I read Summers. I read Summers' review, and the fact that they have the Raid guy and Tony Jaa in the same film and they don't fight each other.
And they don't use it. They don't fight each other.
I was done. I was done. No.
Anyway,
I'm out.
Anyway, as I say, it's not okay. So let me be clear about something. It's not that I don't think that Sylvester Stallone can't be funny, right? It's a handful of roles he was in. Right.
Oscar is underrated.
Yeah, he's pretty good in that. Right.
I need to rewatch that.
But I don't know. I find in this, I don't know. I felt he could have been like from a comedy beat standpoint, he could have been stronger. And he always felt like
everyone else.
Right.
Since everyone else is so good.
Right. Exactly. That's all I feel about it. It's this film. But yeah. We got to talk about it later, plot-wise, later run through.
All right, well, before we get to the plot, right, as we usually do, as it is a retrospect review, we just had to talk about just how we saw it. And I imagine it's the same for everyone here in this chat, where basically we did not see it in theaters, at least in my case, it was a 14-year and over film, so I was a little too young, I was still in primary school.
I saw this on VHS for the first time.
I was negative 3 years. This came out in like 93. I was negative 3 years old when this
these things, dog.
Yeah, so like in my case, I imagine it's the same thing with Tracy. With Tracy. It showed a little station called TTT, Child 2 or 13. That's where I
it TTT or TBC?
It was TTT. It was TTT. I remember that. Yeah.
Was TTT? Oh.
Yeah. So I saw it when it aired on local television, and I enjoyed it, right?
Okay.
At the time, I didn't pick up on all of the jokes and references, and I should call them future jokes, right? That's the term I'll use with the numerous moments of humor in this film, right? Yeah, a lot of future jokes. Yeah, I didn't pick up on all of it though, but I just kind of watched it. I was like, I enjoyed it because I was seeing Stallone, on my small screen TV. I saw that, right? I was patient enough. I waited a few years until it came out on TV. So cool, I saw it, right? But we should mention also too Wesley Snipes, because he was on a roll, in the 90s, right?
In the 90s, yes.
Especially with with films. Well, and you have to thank Spike Lee for this, right? Because he was the star of Mo Better Blues,
right?
And then he was the co-star, because Denzel was the star, but he was the star of Jungle Fever. He was that.
Jungle Fever,
and of course, in the same year, he was in one of my top 10 favorite movies of all time, New Jack City, which I absolutely love. And a good thing that you brought up Bill Cobb, Ricardo. Okay, I was like, hey, Bill Cobb is in this, because he was the old man who killed Wesley Snipes' character.
Right. Which in retrospect, thinking about it, like, they didn't interact with each other at all in the story, in this movie. Which is true. True. That's not gonna miss opportunity.
But then also too, sorry to continue, but also you should keep in mind too. Okay, New Jack City have elements of action in it, but primarily it's a crime drama, right? A great crime drama, great anti-drug drama,
right? It's a great
right?
crime drama.
But in '92, there was a little film that he was in called Passenger 57. I remember how big of a deal that was, right?
I recently I went on a 90s Wesley Snipes kick, just to go through like his I was looking for a pattern. I was looking for something. Listen, all of those movies was good, because the movie that starts off the 90s really was you mentioned Mo Better Blues. I was trying to think of King of New York. That's the one I remember. His first big like
King of New York,
which I really really like. But yeah, is when
Lawrence Fishburne and Wesley Snipes, and they have scenes where they get to work opposite each other. Holy crap!
Pretty good. Yep. But yeah, right before Passenger 57, but that was like the jumping off point of his big action thing, because he had White Men Can't Jump.
I forgot to mention that great movie, by the way. Well, I actually kept it in preparation for the remake, which is awful. But yeah, I was shocked at how great the original film was. Like, y'all should really rewatch it. It's a great movie. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I vaguely remember, again, only because I was going through the kick, the run through is like, I vaguely remember Boiling Point, vaguely remember Water Dance, vaguely remember Rising Sun, which was
with Sean Connery. Yes, I remember.
Yeah, which was okay, giving it back, and then right after Rising Sun was Demolition Man. And he do his thing in this real weird way, and White is work, but it was such a breakout role for him in that sense. Now, like, I think Demolition Man was like his first really big 90s hit, if anything, other than New Jack City. It was the one that put him into the weird mainstream, because I don't know how big of a film New Jack City was, like, at the time. In terms of like,
it was pretty big from what I remember.
Well, a mass market, I just thinking in terms of like what America was. Like, yes, New Jack City was a hit.
True.
Was a hit, but I think most of New Jack City was really. I don't think its theater run was that big. I think it was VHS and syndication. Well, we use the word syndication, but really I mean by just proliferation, right? Mm-hmm. By home media. But I think really it's Passion of 57 and then Demolition Man that really puts him on the map. And this is what, a couple years before, 4 years before what, Blade? When Blade came out? 98?
98.
Yeah, Blade. Right. Yeah, Blade was, let me see.
98.
I have Wesley Snipes.
98.
Yeah. So
yeah, 2 years before Blade.
Right. And yeah, so I Demolition Man is one of those things that just so, like, to me, this is Simon Phoenix is a big defining role for him. Like, I think in the mainstream 90s, as the 90s is concerned, like, yes, in retrospect, we have the magic of the internet, so we get to, pull up all kind of information and make sense of a grander pattern. But at the time, I think, when people thought of Wesley Snipes, they really thought of Simon Phoenix, like, in terms of the mass appeal of that. So, yeah, that's another thing about this film, because he's really good in this. He's really funny.
He is. Right? Yeah. But before we get into the plot now, because you've been fairly quiet, Tracy, but I understand. Yeah, Tracy, that's what I just mentioned briefly your just quick history with the film, and then we can just jump into the moments in the film that stood out to us.
I was thinking about this for the last week, and I was trying to figure out where I saw it, because like you, it wouldn't have been in the cinemas at all. But I kept thinking it was TV6, but it was one of those local television stations, which, I mean, give credit to the TV stations back then. You are 12, 13, because in 93, I was just heading into high school, or, 5 of us. So that was our scene. Old, very old. But the point is, Saturday and Sunday night, they would be giving you Tango and Cash. They'd be giving you all these kinds of movies, Executive Decision, and then of course things like this. So that was how I came into it. And then like you would see it on TNT later on in life. and then eventually on TCM for whatever, like summer kind of some things or whatever it is like that. But for me, that is how I came into it. I remember seeing it back then, and like you, Sir Bailey, there were some things that went over my head, but there were like three things in particular that stuck with me. One was, the idea of the sexless sex, the I thought it was Taco Bell, but it's Pizza Hut and the franchise wars.
Well, so it's both.
No, it is Taco Bell.
It's both, but
It's both.
I'm gonna
It's
talk
both,
about
actually.
that. I'm gonna talk about
Yes,
that.
yeah. So
Right.
in Europe, and in England, it's Pizza Hut. In America, it's Taco Bell. Yeah.
Really?
Oh, that explains it. That explains
Oh,
it.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's both.
I didn't.
Because I'm saying I know I have a memory of it being, because all my life I was like, oh, it's Taco Bell, but then when I watched it again,
Yeah.
I heard them say
I watched.
Pizza Hut won the
I watched
franchise
it.
wars.
Yeah.
I watched the film this week, and my American DVD, it's Taco Bell.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, yeah.
So no Mandela effect bullshit. No, that's not what happened. It's
Oh, so
you know.
it's not like the Sinbad movie.
Right, no, it's not that. It's really what happened is that it was literally both. It is just because of who money get to pull faster and where.
Oh,
That's true.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say, going back into Demolition Man, watching it, was like, this movie here. And granted, the other thing that I'm going to talk about is like, it came out in the year 2000 or 2001, somewhere around there. But this was for me the Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, long before Batman Beyond Return of the Joker.
Oh, really?
No.
It's a very
Good
similar
thing you
plot.
bring up that because I have to mention Batman and Joker. But go on.
Yeah.
Listen, there were some things that I saw when I was rewatching it now that I just, Louis D'Esposito was an assistant producer there. And this is the man now who is like one of the big three over in Marvel. And I'm listening to the music and I'm wondering, why is this music sounding like this? It's because the guy who did Batman Forever is the same guy who did the music, the score for Demolition Man. And
That's
like,
right. I'm gonna talk about that too.
So I'm wondering, why is it hitting all these notes? And I'll just throw this out there. Over the last couple of weeks, the Right Honorable Sir Scorsese has been talking about film and content and why, content is things that you eat as opposed to film and all that kind of stuff. And I have agreed with pretty much everything that he has said because, I mean, when he speaks, you sit up and you listen. But I went back last night and I was watching Demolition Man and I was thinking about what we had back then because the 90s gave you, it's the English Patient, which comes in later on in like 98 or thereabout. Right. But it gives you the English Patient, but you also get things like Demolition Man and Tango and Cash, and you had this wide variety of film that you can say this is what film is. This is how broad film is. It's not content that and even like going back and looking at Warner Brothers back then in the 90s was this studio where it was like, okay, let's take a chance, and you know what? We're going to take a chance. We're going to have this cop and we're going to have this Joker character who is pretty much doing, in a future where everybody is like supposedly tame, and let's take a chance and see where it goes. As opposed to now where it's like, if this IP doesn't work, then we'll go to this other IP, and now I have the potential of seeing 40 Barbie sequels. I missed that. I was smiling all night last night watching Demolition Man. But as a 12, 13-year-old sitting down, watching my local channel, watching this on a weekend, this was gold. And so it just brought back a whole set of feelings and smile on my face. So that's where I live where Demolition Man is concerned.
Right. So just gonna mention some notes here, just stuff that I took down, right? So yes, Demolition Man, 993 from director Marco Brambilla, right? Good thing that you brought up Elliot Goldenthal because if you listen closely, you will hear musical flourishes that sound similar to Batman Forever, like especially horns. He has this sort of like I don't want to say theatrical, but more like a circus style kind of way that he orchestrates the horns, like if you remember like certain action scenes in Batman Forever, most of which involve like, Two-Face and Riddler. Yeah, you'll hear those stuff, right? So like when Simon Phoenix shows up, you just hear like the music sound a little bit more I don't want to say cartoonish, but more over the top now, more comedic in a sense. Like, wow, yes. Yeah, it works, right?
There's a wall of like brass sound when a lot of the big action scenes are happening because of the way it's composed. Because he is leaning on the horns in a way that's very like punchy. I think the 90s first composition goes like the 80s and 90s, but 90s in particular. Like you hear a lot of that style of composing, especially for action. Like it's very horn driven in a way that
it needs to be bombastic.
Exactly.
Yes, bombastic. Very bombastic.
Yeah. There's a few bits that I wasn't really fancy of. That's where he would kind of incorporate like a little hip hop record, like scratching basically. Yeah, I'm like, all right,
it's a black Simon. We get it.
Okay, it's a black man. All right, I get it's 93, but oh gosh, really, like, oh, this is for the urban audience. Like, no, stop it, right?
Right.
Anyway, so. I like how it opens up with the Hollywood sign in flames, like all the letters are in flames. I'm like, wow, this movie is really prophetic, though. Like the writers and actors strike. Like, think about that. Like, wow, like this is the fall of Hollywood, right? But it's actually LA in 1996, right? And it's really interesting that this movie came out like a few years after the LA riots, right? And the introduction of Stallone's character is in a police helicopter, i.e., a ghetto burglar. So that was really interesting to me. Like, it's like that.
There's a little bit of Predator too in this. Like it does that.
Oh,
like,
I know what you mean. Yeah,
there is a bit. Yeah,
was set in LA, by the way.
Right.
Yeah. I forgot what year it was set in. I can't remember.
94, I think. 94, 1997.
Yeah, it was set in 97. Even though the movie came out in 1990, right? And fun fact, even The Predator, i.e. one of my top 10 picks for worst movie of the past decade, they butchered that because like there's a date where they said, they show like a clip there, like or a still of what happened in Predator 2, and they put 1990, but it's like, no doofus, it's set in 1997. It was released in 1990. Oh god.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway. So John Spartan is our hero. He's played by Stallone, and he's sent to stop Simon Phoenix, right? Played by Wesley Snipes, right? And I like how they set up early on, send a maniac to catch a maniac, right? Because John is kind of pretty much hell-bent on stopping Simon, right? To the point that when he jumps out the helicopter, right, he does opposed to yelling Geronimo, he just yells Phoenix and jump on. I'm like, wow, you that hell-bent on catching this guy, right? Phoenix.
They sell you on their hate-based love affair so hard.
Yes.
Right.
Like the amount of it's so good.
Yes. And like when you see Simon, like instantly you're thinking Joker. Oh, sorry. What are you saying, Tracy?
Oh no. I was just saying, is that kind of MacGyver Murdoch kind of relationship that the two of them seem to have had as well? The original MacGyver and Murdoch, I didn't really watch it once, but
and of course, also like the other comparison, and I think I made this before we were recording. Face Off. That whole thing where you have the cop, you have the cop and the bad guy who have this another crossover action film. You have this cop and this bad guy who have this intense, very personal. Like I feel like in the 90s, it's not enough that like the bad guy and the cop are just on the wrong sides of the law. There has to be something personal, there has to be this absolute next level personal vendetta between the two, which leads to It's so good. It's so theatrical. It's delightful.
Yeah, it is. Agreed. And like the moment that you see Simon Phoenix, right? I mean, it's the typical, he's snorting coke and all that kind of stuff, right? Very, very cliche. I mean, you saw it in friggin' Die Hard too, right? But whatever, right? But like just the moment that you see Wesley though, like he immediately steals the show for me, right? Cause he's just so cocky and just the bravura that he shows off, right? And yes, we know early on that, he's holding 20 passengers of this municipal bus hostage, right? But still, it's Wesley Snipes too, and I just love how he just immerses himself into the role, right? There's a great little moment, right? Just like during the back and forth, because of course you have to expect that. Where he says, "I swear I'll lose my mind if it wasn't attached," and then John says, "I'll keep that in mind," right? Just that early foreshadowing is one of those lines that you would really think about. But then when you see the climax, like, wow, they really like remember that and brought it back. Wow. Okay.
That was brilliant. Brilliant.
The first, well, I should say, just early on before we get into like, the major moment of that sequence, I was picking up on Dark Knight vibes. I was picking up on okay, like John is gonna beat the shit out of Simon if Simon doesn't tell him where the hostages are, right? And Simon is all laughing and is like, oh, look at you, fuck you, and all that kind of stuff. It's very much like the Christian Bale, Heath Ledger dynamic, especially like that interrogation scene from The Dark Knight, right?
Yeah.
Especially with how it ends too, with the explosions and, oh, you know, you have a choice, blah, 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 right? But that first action sequence, though, it's a shockingly great one that actually holds up, right? But it ends on a literal bang, though, because you're seeing Simon's hideout blows up, right? Blows up thanks to some barrels of C4, right? And it's an actual building that blows up. And instantly when I saw that, it reminded me of the climax of, you know, a little action classic, Police Story 2. Because, yeah, it ended with a building being exploded, being blown up, right? And even though you don't see Stallone running out, like you don't see him outside running, he does pick up Simon and, you know, run off before the police comes down, right? But yeah, when I saw that for myself, like when I was saw it, right, in the film, just recapping it, my jaw dropped. I was like, wow, they spend this amount of money to show a building literally blow up in camera. You know? I was like, wow, round of applause. I love that.
Not even a miniature or anything like.
No, that's what catch me. It's an actual building, right?
This was the beauty of the. This for me is the beauty of like the 90s, you know, and that kind of vibe. It's like, okay, we're gonna really go out there, and we're really gonna spend the money, and we're really gonna blow up a building.
That's right.
Yeah.
Like it has this spare no expense thing. We're gonna get this big sci-fi movie. We're gonna get two big stars. We're gonna blow up actual buildings, and then we're gonna have a whole future bit that's gonna have all this other technology. We're gonna have a muscle car driving through the street, a futuristic car. Oh my god.
Yeah. Now, speaking of the title, I love where you see John's superior, his boss come and says, damn it, John, I'm tired of this Demolition Man shit, right? But, you know, like, at first when you hear it, you're like, oh, okay, well, that's just like a little quip that he threw at him. But later on, there's a moment where you see, like, this old news report. Well, that's in 2022, right? Where the story really is set. Where, they really used to call John Demolition Man because of how far he would go to catch the bad guy, even if it means shit getting blown up. I love that. I don't care. It's just like, whatever, shit blown up, but I got the job done. I love that, right?
A whole mall gets destroyed to save
a little girl. I was like, what?
Right.
I love how the girl responds to the news reporter. That is, I love that.
Like,
I love that.
Like, that bit is so funny. Like, John Spartan, do you think it was worth blowing up an entire mall just to save the one girl? The little girl.
Right. And then they had the thing go off in the background because of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now again, going back to Dark Knight, they have the moment where, you know, we're all thinking, okay, well, the hostages weren't in the building, right? But then Simon was like, yeah, they actually were. One of the it's either a firefighter or I think it's a police officer finds the bodies, right? And they were all there, right? And I love Simon's response, right? It's like, you see, John doesn't care. Oh my God, how can you sacrifice all these innocent people for me? Wow, that is pure proto Joker right there. Joker. I love that. Yeah,
that is Joker.
So due to his negligence and after actually side with the law for this one, John was kind of negligent there. They sentenced him to 70 years of sub-zero rehabilitation, right? I.e. cryo sleep, right? I think for me this was one of the first times that I really saw cryogenics being incorporated into sci-fi, right? Like for me,
in a really smart way.
Well, other than Alien, I don't think they really use it all that much.
True. But then again, I didn't see Alien till like years afterwards. But you're right.
Okay, no problem. Right? Yeah, go ahead.
But for me, it's the way how it's done because you have the gel and you have that liquid, and then they put the cryo. Because usually when you think of cryogenics, it's like you go in a tube and this air comes on over here and you just there until
you think it's sci-fi had, like the early 90s had a lot of like that tech bro, because remember we also leading into the nascent internet, so you had a whole tech bro culture, and cryogenics is a whole thing because like you had a bunch of people who think they need to be immortal for some reason or some nonsense, right? So cryogenics was like a big staple for sci-fi for a long time.
It was. I like how they say that his behavior will be altered through synaptic suggestion, foreshadowing there. And he'll be eligible for parole no earlier than 2046, right? And pretty much this gives Stallone, because this is during the whole title sequence, right? This pretty much gives Stallone the opportunity to tell fellow action hero Arnold Schwarzenegger, hey, I was naked in a sci-fi movie too. And speaking of Arnold, after bringing this up one time, he has his own library, Dread. Like, I remember this being a bit, but I didn't remember the exact bit. But what I saw it, though, this is the conversation scene later on with, between him and Sandra Bullock's character. Yeah, the Schwarzenegger Presidential Library, Dread.
Presidential Library.
I can imagine Arnold, like, losing his shit, cracking up the moment he heard that, though. You know? The Presidential Library, though. This is where we at.
Yeah.
Well, I know, Tracy, you put out a still and you tagged me on it on Facebook last night, but
you want to
talk about the Presidential Library?
Listen, that cracked me up, the idea of Schwarzenegger being president and the Constitution, even though, he wasn't an American, they made a leeway for him.
Yes, I love how they mentioned that too. It's a little bit of dialogue. I love that.
I remember this coming up when back when it had the dumb conspiracy theory about Obama not being being eligible, and we were saying, hey, why does that Arnold couldn't do it at all? And the idea is that it's your parents have to be Americans at least, right? So it gets into that is a dumb conspiracy theory because even on its face it's wrong. Like, here's the thing: even if you prove Obama wasn't born in America, he could still be president because his mom is American.
Right,
and so on and so forth, right? There's all these little things, right? So that was a whole thing, like, hey, how come, what is making a president, and that whole thing about it, and they bring it up. And it's a great bit. Like, it's like, here's why this is extra funny, because Arnold went to become governor of California. In actuality...
The heights for me, though, and I'm remembering something that Tina Fey said when she won some prize. I was talking about, there was a day years ago where she and John, the last presidential candidate for the Republicans, haven't made sense. And John McCain, she and he went out, and the Time magazine snapped some photos, and she says that he had on good authority that he had that painting of her with her glasses and him standing up there in his room, in his office. And he's been looking at it, getting ideas. So then years later, when Sarah Palin shows up, it became like, so that was a whole scene. So I'm looking at Demolition Man, and I was laughing my head off at that whole presidential library, because it's not to say like if he's going to look at it and be like, ooh, there's ideas, but to see later on
he becomes
that
governor.
Schwarzenegger would then become governor.
That is so funny.
And people are like, wait, that could happen then. Could it happen? Because here's the thing, it's not new. There was another actor who was governor of California, who went to become president.
Yeah.
So people was like, at the time, that was like, it was weird. It was real weird.
Yeah, it was.
Especially given when the film came out in '86, which would have been into the second term of that last case.
Right.
Where,
and so on and so forth.
No, 93. Well, 93. 93. So we would have, like, that previous case's presidency would have been very recent memory still.
Exactly. So that was kind of, I think that was just a running joke. It was just like, oh well, actor become. That's a joke. That was it. It's the whole Simpsons predict the future thing, right? It's not that the Simpsons predict the future; it's that the bullshit happened before, and that's where they're pulling from.
That's right.
Or also the case of throwing out so many predictions that some of them are going to be right. Like, eventually, if you throw out it's like the whole, Nostradamus predicted this. Yeah, Nostradamus also predicted 300 other things that didn't happen. So like,
right. Yeah, exactly. So it's basically Texas sharpshooter fallacy, right?
Yeah. So cut to 2032. Sorry. And here we're introduced to the rather lovely-looking Lieutenant Lenina Huxley, played by Oscar winner. I mean, don't mind the show that she won the Oscar for as, like, Suspect. No, Retrospect. Sandra Bullock.
Lord.
For real,
boy. Jeez.
I mean, that's not her problem, but,
True, it's not her problem, to be fair. That whole thing around Suspect.
Go ahead. But I do love that's sus. Yeah, but I do love, like, in her trajectory from this movie. Yeah, she starred in arguably one of the best action movies of the 90s. That would be Speed. Right. And then she followed up with Speed 2. The less said about that, the better, right? Yeah. And I won't lie, the moment that she calls William Smithers, that's one of the wardens at the cryo penitentiary, right? I instantly thought about Tracy, boy, because it's mellow greetings, William. Be well, Lenina. I was like, be well.
Because every sign-off that I have, every email, every sign-off that I have, I send it off with be well.
Be well, yes.
And so to come back and scare everybody being like, be well, it's like, oh my God, that's hype.
Yeah.
But for a hot minute there, consider the fact that in her 90s inspired office, there is a Lethal Weapon 3 poster.
Yes,
I lost my mind.
Yeah, the last great Lethal Weapon movie. Let's be real here. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. No. Hands down.
No doubt.
I don't know what you mean. Lethal Weapon was a trilogy. We don't talk about it.
Yeah, we don't talk about 4. I mean, Jet Li was in it, but we don't talk about 4.
Yeah.
Chris Rock was in it, but we don't talk about 4, right? But yeah, let's go on. Yeah. But yeah. I was like, wow, we actually have that poster there, and the movie came out a year before this. I'm like, what? Okay. But I mean, it's Warner Brothers, right? So it's Warner Brothers just doing a little advertising, but whatever, right? It's cool, right?
But it could play because if she's keen on everything 90s. Right. Then she, in her universe, she would have seen that movie, and when she's doing her research and all that kind of, that would be part of her research. I was like, okay, I could understand that, but it was still funny as hell seeing, Muto and Riggs in the back of her. Office.
I mean, that poster is iconic, right? That poster is so iconic, right?
It is.
Yeah, so well, one thing I picked up on that, of course, I didn't pick up on when I first saw this film, right? I love the allusion to H.G. Wells' The Time Machine, right? So, like, while everything in San Angeles, right? Because that's what they call it now. And I like that as I love that choice of name, like, just creatively. So it's like BC and AD. Okay. So, like, you have Los Angeles and now you have San Angeles. That's great, right?
Because
yeah, because we'll learn later on why, right? Which I'll get to, right?
At the time, right? So at the time, it had, anybody who just, as a child, I was a big geology nerd. So the Ring of Fire, it makes sense. In fact, it could still happen. Massive earthquake, but 1994 had a really big LA earthquake.
Okay, I didn't know.
Big disaster earthquake. So it's like writing that conceit into the script make a lot of sense. Because earthquakes had a lot of earthquakes in that area. So having a massive enough earthquake that could cause a massive upheaval and the land, you could lose a bunch of land or something like that. Not that far-fetched because it's on the Ring of Fire. But yeah, this movie came out this year. And it make a lot of sense for that to happen.
Yeah, well, yes. 93.
Right.
But yeah,
the following year had a huge earthquake.
Right. Like, but back to the Time Machine thing, right? So there's this like underground group of people who just dissatisfied with the world above, right? I was thinking, they're like the Morlocks. Like, okay, I get that, right? But in this case, they're called Scraps, which is run by Edgar Friendly, who is played by holy shit, allow me to see you, Dennis Leary. I was like, hey, you in this too? You know what I mean? Like, wow. Right?
Yeah.
Also, I forgot that Rob Schneider.
Right? He basically just doing his stand-up routine.
Okay, well, I'm not familiar with his stand-up, right? But I assume, he probably did. But I'm going to talk about his character in the film later on.
Oh, yeah. No, here's the thing. Talking about the Time Machine connection. One of the things I love about Demolition Man is that this is a nerdy film on, like, 3 different levels. So, like... Yes, there's probably allusions to the Time Machine. There's a lot of sci-fi allusions. Like the one that threw me off is Sandra Bullock's character's name, Huxley, which is clearly a reference to Aldous Huxley, who wrote Brave New World.
Yep.
Which, given that this is the world of Brave New World, like it's kind of one of the things I love about the movie. Rewatching it is that the opening bit with like a decently, probably like a paramilitary police force and this whole like environment that's like everything up in flames and like the kind of cop John Spartan is, it's very much, this feels less like this is nowadays, especially with the cryo freeze technology, and more of this is a post-apocalyptic like Mad Max type world, and then he gets frozen and ends up in a dystopian world essentially. And there are so many different, I was saying earlier, this is also a movie that's pretty great because I feel like it's really it's wild that it comes out the same year as Last Action Hero, because because of the fact that it has the time jump, it's the fish out of water movie. It gets the chance to be this hilarious self-aware action movie where like a lot of the like I think it gets away because it doesn't go too much into like all the tropes and the cliches. Like just like, look at this trope, look at this cliche. But like it's more self-aware in that it plays all the tropes at their absolute biggest. It plays the tropes to their absurdity. And I think that's why this is one of my favorite comedies. Like I would put this.
Oh wow.
I meant to. Yeah. No. This is one of my all-time favorite comedies. Like honestly, because like, and partially because it has the same writer as one of my other favorite comedies, which I didn't know until I was doing research for this episode. It's written by the same guy who wrote Heathers.
Okay.
Which makes complete sense when you watch it, right? Because there's a very similar, like, we're not going to acknowledge the tropes. We're just going to play them so over the top that it becomes that you're thinking about them, and that's funny. The dialogue is so over the top in the best way. And all the nerdy allusions are really great, but then there's also all the stuff about the world building that's been acknowledged, like the fact that there's a little in this I wouldn't say politically correct future world, this dystopian world or whatever. There's like ordinances against swearing, and so anytime someone swears, it prints out a little fine. But what's really funny is that no matter how dramatic the scene, if a character swears in the background, you hear the little ordinance thing print off.
That's true.
It's
what's funny about it is the working bureaucracy of it. Because again, the swear thing comes up when it's a recording of a person. So who's being fined exactly? Like, study that girl might be still alive and she gets a fine for a swear she didn't make because of a recording of her. Check about that for a second. Okay, because she might be still alive. Like, who it sent this fine to? Little things like that.
Yeah, good point.
Yes.
Yeah, look, right. It's all these little weird bureaucracies that kind of funny about it now. Well, we had to get to, very soon, when you get to it, but we had to get to the 3 seashells. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we get to that in a bit, right?
Right.
But yeah, so meanwhile now, Simon Phoenix is having his parole hearing, right? He was frozen at the same time, surprise, with John, right? And surprisingly, Simon knows he passed with the cuffs he's strapped in. And because, audiences saw Wesley last year in Passenger 57, he proceeds to kick all sorts of ass, right? I remember a moment that really stood out to me when I first saw it, right? Where Simon uses poor Warden Smithers' eyeball to do, like, this retina scan.
With the pen.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, with the pen. Like, that was brutal.
That was
camera angle and smile on his face for that.
Yeah. Now,
I love how
go on.
He has an absolute vicious streak, but he hides it under all the humor. But then there's a couple moments where you see the viciousness, and there's like, oh shit, like you kind of warm up to this guy because of how funny he is, and then he gets actually vicious. Like, I think the final fight, when at the very end when he finally gets tired of playing with Spartan and actually just comes to, like, it's this just got real moment of the fight. It's like, oh crap.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. So back to
I just want to. No, I was just saying, because it's something that I had scribbled down there when I saw their parole hearing and stuff like that. The most unreasonable and unreal thing that I could think of in that entire movie was the idea that after all these years, no lobbyist, no government official, nobody didn't come and decry the cryogenic process, because there is no reality. No bureaucracy with some opposition leader or some Democrat, well, it's the U.S., so some Democrat or some conservative would come up and say, this is going to keep costing the taxpayers so much. And the fact that they continue to have that for me was like, that's the most unbelievable part of it.
The thing about that is that you're not sure what the world building of the world is, because it's the United States is still politically contiguous in this world, right? That's one.
Right.
But it still plays with another kind of popular political conceit, which is like California. It's kind of its own thing, right? They still play with that, like, oh, California has its own laws and whatever. Well, they call it San Angeles or whatever. But it have any like actual manipulation of the law? Anybody could say anything about what's going on here? Not sure. It's unclear. One big like plot thing I always had a problem with in Demolition Man is why did they live in underground instead of leaving the city? Like, that was always kind of weird to me. Like, why live underground? Stuff like that, right? It's like exactly, you could just leave or go to the middle of the country, wherever it is. Not explained. It's not clear. I mean, I'm sure sci-fi people could give a couple of decent answers to that, but like, that's like, why not just move out or leave? And they play with the whole gentrification idea of, you either live in absolute poverty or you had to move or something like that. No, not sure. Right. It's unclear. And he's important, so he's important enough for Cocteau to try to kill him. But why? It's all these little things that they never really explain. Still a decent plot in my humble opinion, but it brings up all these weird questions. But go ahead.
Well, that's true. Right, so back to Simon, right? So he flees to Santa Monica, right? And here you see he's rocking the iconic getup, right? You know, the light blue jeans with the suspenders, the orange vest underneath. Like, you know, it's
nice total Will Smith from Fresh Prince bullshit.
You know? yeah.
It really is.
And of course, you know, I forgot to mention too, you know, the hairdo, which, you know, very famously, Dennis Rodman rocked, right? Because of that film.
Right.
And fun fact, I didn't even know this till after the fact. Yeah, Wesley hated that. So we hated that hairdo. So when the movie ended, it was like, nah, I had to get rid of this. Yeah, he didn't like it. He didn't like it at all. But yeah, it's so funny that Dennis, you know, dyed his hair white, you know, because of that film, right? So that's amazing. He goes into this like self-help boot thing, and he hacks into the system, and well, he finds the location of Edgar Friendly, right? But he starts hearing the voice of what appears to be Smithers, right? Well, we thinking it's Smithers, right? Because of the whole rehab program thing, right? But you learn later on who exactly is behind the scenes, right? So I love that, you know, the police show up with glow rods. They show up armed with glow rods. That's what it's called, right?
Oh my god!
So it's like what clever. I just love how clever the writing is here, right? So I love how unsure the cops are because they don't know how to apprehend Simon, and they never responded to a warning someone before. So, you know, I like that there's this AI saying, approach and repeat ultimatum in an even firmer tone of voice.
Yes, I forget to call it. I forget to call it that. A murder that kill.
Yeah, they call it a murder that kill. Yeah.
My favorite part in all that is during the bit that follows when Simon Phoenix beats all their asses. Rob Schneider's character stands up and goes, "What is he doing?
Police officers. We're not trained to handle this kind of violence." That is one of the best lines in this movie, hands down. That is up there with "There's no fighting in the war room" from Dr. Strangelove.
Yes,
it's absurd, but it's ironic at the same time. I love it. I love it.
And it's extra funny because it's where they are at LA, right? Well, it was LA. So I mean,
exactly. Yes.
Extra fun. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. I will admit, you know, it's an early 90s sci-fi movie, right? So there's some dated tech in this movie. I know I'm not talking about like the computer screens and the text and whatnot. That's fine. You know, I could forgive that, right? But like for example, where you see Dr. Raymond Cocteau, right? Played by the great Nigel Hawthorne, right? And he's addressing these people like he has this meeting in his office, right? About the scraps and how they are threat to society and all that kind of stuff. You see like these like monolith like structures with screens, so like that's where the people are. And it's how they move when Raymond's walking. I'm like,
it's Zoom.
So goofy.
It's Zoom.
Yeah. It's Zoom. It is Zoom.
It is Zoom, but I don't know. It's just how those structures move. Oh gosh, that looks so good.
Well, I mean, it does lead to some great comedy because there's that bit when he starts talking to the aide about the attack, and then he looks over and all the screens were turning to him, and they all turn.
Yes.
They all turn back. Like that bit is really funny.
Oh, by the way, speaking of the aide, right? I love how his name is Associate Bob, right? I love how like Reba tells him, "Be well them for me." I love that. That's just a great wild. Like this.
I'm trying to. Off the top of my head, Associate Bob he was in Babylon 5. I want to say that.
All right. Well, let me just find the actor's name.
He might have been He might have been in Star Trek Insurrection under a lot of makeup.
Right. It's played by Glenn Chandix. What is he in? Nah. Okay. So you're not he wasn't Beetlejuice. Yes. Sorry. He was in a couple of
that's where he's from. Yes. That's true. Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay.
All right. Yes. I had to look on what he is, but for some reason, in my head, he's in another big sci-fi, and I'm trying to think of that. Oh, good.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's move it quick, right? So, Chief Earl, right, who is is like I watched the face, and is only then I realized, it's the guy who played oh gosh, let me just get the name quickly. Who played Samuel Norton from Shawshank Redemption, right? Yeah, it's the same actor. Like, hey, that's you. Yeah. Word. Okay. That's Bob Gunton, by the way, right? So yeah, he pretty much signs off on the idea of towing out John Spartan, right? Out of his man-sized ice cube, right? I like that you have Bill Cobb's character who's played Zachary, right? And he's like, Simon's an old-fashioned criminal, so we need an old-fashioned cop, right? You know, it's an action movie trope, right?
Yeah,
you need this type of guy to stop this other type of a similar type of guy, right? It's like that,
right? Yeah, Bill Cobbs was the pilot at the beginning, right? Yeah.
Yes. I didn't even realize that, right?
Yeah, same character. Yeah.
Right.
It's such a genuinely heartfelt moment when like he and Spartan have that reunion. It's like, oh wait, I remember you.
Yes.
What was I thinking? No.
And
like one of this movie's smartest things is how it will take the sci-fi tropes, and as I said earlier, it plays them so big, but like now it kind of explains why they're so big. Like his boss, like the police chief, gets to do the whole like, God damn it, you're doing this all right, like
right.
you're we have the law for a reason. But it makes a little more sense when he's literally blowing buildings up, and they live in a world where no one even has like all the weapons belong in a museum, essentially. Like it actually it makes that trope fit just a little bit. Like it's one of those tropes where like you watch like a Dirty Harry movie where like, or what was that not Dirty Harry movie that Clint Eastwood did with Martin Sheen, where like they're wreaking absolute havoc over the town.
Not The Rookie.
The Rookie, yes. Right. Yeah, they have The Rookie, and they keep getting hauled into the office and getting berated as usual. And you're like, oh, okay, but it makes so much more sense in a film like this because of how over the top they're playing it, and it's so effective.
Yeah. So that's a touch.
Associate. Yeah, that's quick aside. He was also in Headers, by the way. Glenn Chandix.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Right.
So he understood.
Yes.
He understands the assignment exactly.
Exactly.
Right.
But I love like in that reunion, right, between John and Zachary, right, where John says shit, right. And, well, Alfredo, who is played by Benjamin Bratt, I didn't even know he was in this movie. He's surprised by this, right? I love Lenina's response where she says, yeah, this is how insecure heterosexual males used to bond. I'm like, wow, boy. That was so sharp. Man. That was so sharp. I love it, right?
Because she's insulting him and talking to him as well at the same point in time, and she had to give that explanation.
Oh, exactly.
Right.
But yeah, boy.
I think he even says something like, they're clearly friends, but they're insulting each other so vulgarly.
Right.
Yeah, that's the naivete of Alfredo in that scene.
But her perspective as well is funny because like she gets so much stuff wrong.
Yes.
God! Yeah, it plays with that anthropology dimension. It really cleverly does. Like, that's kind of funny to see how people just so misinterpret shit. And yeah, sorry to say it, have a lot of kids today who get shit wrong about the 90s. Like, no, that is not what it was.
That's true.
Happened. That's true. Yeah, it's like wow, kind of. As I say, as feel like Bill Cobbs when talking about some shit. It gonna get weird next year when they do that Freak Nick documentary or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, we're good.
So we have to talk about probably one of the most iconic moments in the film. The 3 seashells, right? So John is like complaining about, there's no toilet paper in the bathroom, right? And everybody just crack it up, right? John doesn't know.
Rob Snyder mostly,
Yeah. So John doesn't know what the 3 seashells are for, right? And then, right after that, that's where they have the reunion between Zach and John, right? So, like, right afterwards, like, as at the moment that John notices the fines coming out of this dispenser, he just goes and is like, you fucking, you motherfucking.
I remember TV6 cutting this. I remember.
Yes, they censored. That was they censored that, right? That's and I just love it's just 5. He just says that he just cursed like 5 times, right? I just takes his 5, fines, and it's like so much for the seashells. See you in a few minutes. Brilliant,
right?
Love it. Mic drop, talk done. But your thoughts on this, 3 seashells scene?
So yeah, the 3 seashells thing is one of those like funny nut bits that it literally won't have an explanation. A bunch of nerds trying to give an explanation for it. It's still funny if it's going to make sense because like wait, how you're dealing with the particle issues, the smell or whatever it is, and I assume it have some like static electricity something or some crap like that or whatever it is. But no, the 3 seashells is such a great like bit because you'll just never know the answer. That's funny to me. That's very funny to me. So on and so forth.
When they cut to, and this is later on in the movie, but when they cut to his apartment and you see those 3 seashells sitting on there in the bath, you look at that and it's like the dynamic of it leaves you wondering, like why am I using this? A seashell on the hole and it's a metal seashell, or using it down there. It just doesn't seem, it doesn't seem logical.
It's a very clever conceit because of how technology not intuitive to a person. That is it. Simple. I'm sure. Yeah, go ahead. CC, sorry.
No, I was thinking about how it's very much a clever reversal. How I feel like you get actual archaeologists and anthropologists who will come across an object or a tool from another time, and they'll go, I have no idea what this is. Like we don't know what this does. There's no one who's written about it. They clearly, it was important for something or other, but we have no idea what this is. Exactly. And I love sci-fi that manages to flip that for the future. Like like this whole thing, like the toilet paper. Back at the time, they used wadded up paper in order to It's like, oh, he doesn't know about the 3 seashells.
Right. Simple. And I can imagine there's go back and forth about that, because it have like pay phones, or all kind of things, like what a Rolodex is, and so on and so forth. And you could go back and forth about it, because it have a whole bunch of shit now. I was like, and thinking in my head, wow, I would have never known about this as a child, and I'm a child. Like far as adult or old people just having no clue what that is. And it's a clever conceit, very clever conceit in my humble opinion. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So now we get to one of the best set pieces in this movie, right? A museum that is dedicated to replica prior to the earthquake, right? Which by the way took place in 2010.
Ignoring the casual racism, but geez, Wesley Snipes was so funny in this sequence.
I know, right? He just going off track. It's almost, I would say, almost equivalent of like the Riddler in Batman Forever, like in in the Batcave, just blowing shit up and just throwing quips, right? But the moment, like, first time I saw this, right, when I heard the Hall of Violence shit, I was like, all right, I fucks with this too. I mean, it's very self-explanatory, right? And how Simon gets access to that, just those sheer guns is genius. He just watch a guy, is like, how much do you weigh? I love that. He picks a guy up and throws him into the window. I'm like, what?
But the stuff before it was funny, when he was just kicking the glass and it just solid physical comedy.
Oh yeah, he keeps kicking the glass. Everyone eventually leaves. Everyone's watching him like, "What's up with this guy?" And then a helpful person comes up like, "How can I help you?"
Exactly.
And they're like, "How much do you weigh?"
How much do you weigh?
I think my favorite bit.
Right.
Yes. Like I love watching his train of thought. I think
it's a clever conceit, because he have all of this like military knowledge and stuff that he didn't have when the guy deliberately like upload stuff into his brain. Little stuff like that. So it add in and compile particularly well in the plot now. I was like, oh, that's really clever how they play this out. Again, Wesley Snipes is very funny and good at this.
He is. Because it's just his timing, his comedic timing works here.
Yes. Now, there's a bit just a few minutes later when he finally breaks the glass, right? And he's looking and he's admiring all these guns, and he goes, "Wait, it's the future.
Yes.
Where are all the ray guns?"
Oh
God.
Yeah.
And that gun that he acquires though is badass. So I love it, right? Yeah.
It take like 5 minutes to upload to get ready for it or whatever it was.
That's a drawback though. But when it activates, so it's like holy shit, right? But speaking of that though, I go on. Sorry.
I was about to wonder if that's a direct reference to Akira or not, because Akira also has that ray gun that needs to be recharged.
Right.
Oh, yes.
Right. No, there's a lot of
yeah.
Like I'm sure it's based off of a real gun. Like I'm sure if any gun nerds will tell you, oh no, it's based off of this gun design, blah blah blah. Probably. And a lot of guns like are great guns, just you can't put them out on the field because they have some shitty drawback. But they're great guns otherwise. Like so on so forth. Like that's what it is. Just the Hall of Violence. That's it. So they sell it. And they make it work. And it's just a simple world building bit that works.
Agreed. Now, I love the reunion between John and Simon, right? So Simon's like busting shots and whatnot, I love what he says, I'm a blast from the past, right? And then John steps in, right? And Simon recognizes the voice, sees John, is like, oh shit, they let anybody into the century. I love that. I love that, right?
Yeah.
No.
I love the, wait, they thought you back. Let me get this straight. They thought you to get me.
Yeah,
man, it's like you got the short end or something like
that. Yeah, something like that, right? Now, just in terms of casting, right? Just that shootout and fight scene alone is badass, right? But just the pairing between the two of them is great, right? Because it's the whole big burly boxer in Stallone versus the slender athletic martial artists, and you just see that in their fights. I mean, yes, they bust shots at each other, and it's cool to watch, but it's when they fight though, that's when you really see, oh, that's why they pair those two together. It works so well, right?
Yeah.
Well, they're both, as far as unless I'm much mistaken, they're both, especially when it comes to the fight scenes, they're both doing their own stunts as well, right?
Well, because
I would assume
I think at that point, I think at that point, Wesley Snipes was already a 4th degree or 5th degree black belt by that point. So it's always so you more likely would have been part of the working choreography for that.
Yeah, and it's Stallone, so I assume Stallone did his own stuff too, right? But basically, Simon escapes, right, from the shootout or whatnot, and then he runs into Dr. Raymond. He tries to shoot him, but physically he can't, right? And then you find out, Raymond's the one who brainwashed him. That's a nice little twist, right? Through the rehab program. Yes. That was really smart, right? But the scene ends brilliantly, because, Raymond runs into John and Lenina, right? And he invites them.
Right.
Well, in the European version they say Pizza Hut, right? But the American version they say Taco Bell. So the version I saw in preparation for this was Pizza Hut, and you could see the ADR. Yes, you see the lips say Taco Bell, but they say Pizza Hut, right? It's like oof.
Right.
But it's a nice. Sorry, just to close it off, right? But it's a nice joke, right? But what sells it though is John's reaction, way. It's just that few seconds where he's just like, the fuck?
He's just standing.
Looking forward to it. Thanks. I love that.
He's just like he just kind of stands a little stunned, like, did I hear that right? Like,
yeah.
And even funnier though is Lenina's face, because she does like, oh yeah, Raymond, the guy, the savior of San Angeles is inviting us to go to, well, I'm gonna call it Pizza Taco Hut Bell, right? It's like, oh yeah, you know what I mean? But it's John's reaction though. I love that.
This is one of those movies where, and I think it's because the world building is so good. Like, I was thinking about how they clearly spent a lot of time on this, like, dystopian future speak, and how all the actors actually commit to it really well. But then the other thing I was thinking about is how there's a consistent joke in this movie where whenever he comes across something weird, the explanation actually makes it weirder. So at first he's like, they invite him to Taco Bell, and he's like, oh, Taco Bell. And then later in the car, he's saying, like, why Taco Bell? Well, he doesn't, I straight up say, he says, like, Taco Bell, and she's like, oh, yeah, Taco Bell was the only place to survive the franchise wars. And I was like, wait, whoa!
Yeah.
So we went from Taco Bell to the franchise wars. The explanation actually made it stranger.
Right. I could totally see some hack filmmaker making the franchise wars a movie. Like, just say, we do not prequel to Demolition Man. Schwarzenegger's president, you do it like a franchise wars joke. Like, I just somehow get all these guys to green light on it. Like, that the only reason it can't happen is because none of these people will green light to see the restaurant destroyed in a movie, right?
Exactly.
No. Ricardo, we laugh now, but I'm sure somebody somewhere in a vault is sitting on thinking that scene.
Listen. Just Elon Musk or one of these idiots will just shell out the money to do this. Like, it'll reach that point. We in this weird TikTokification world where anything is anything now. Listen, you see our trailer for the franchise was prequel to Demolition Man. Look at that.
No, but hold on a second. You remember 2 Christmases ago there was a Lifetime short that came out.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right, with Mario Lopez. Yeah, Ricardo and I, we talked about it. We talked about it.
So, I mean, anything is possible at this point in time. You never know, 5 years from now, somebody will come and say, set in the same, blah, 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 the same time period as Demolition Man. Here's the franchise
the prequel to Demolition Man. Well, especially since, I was just thinking, there's also this bizarre phenomenon where all these franchises now have a sense of humor on their social media. Like, you have all these...
That's what I'm trying to tell you. They could totally do that too. Like, I would not be surprised. They could, like, you see, as I say, we're living in this weird, like, who just had a trap album? Wendy's, one of them? Wendy's had a trap album. Like, really? We living in our world now. Like, one of them. A Hamburger Helper, one of these guys. It that weird. Like, when you go online and look, it's corporate shenanigans, right? It's corporate wokeness and corporate, like, manipulation. But, like, if you're going to Twitter pages, they get weird. They get real wild. It's like, what's going on here?
The Twitter accounts. Sometimes the Tumblr accounts are odd as well, but the Twitter accounts in particular, especially Wendy's.
Wendy's continues to be, weird.
So as I say, hear me now, quote me later. I will not be surprised if somebody decide to make a prequel of Demolition Man and call it the franchise wars. Straight up, just do a totally bizarre Brazil style comedy.
I hope I will direct it. I will direct it.
Exactly.
I swear I will.
Right. Directed by CC.
Well, especially since I was thinking about this, because, like, one of the things about Demolition Man that makes it such a fun film to revisit is just how again, it goes back to that whole Simpsons predicted the future thing. Like, there's just so many elements, like little things about Demolition Man that weirdly came true. Like, Like, I mean, like, first of all, the whole thing about, like, the franchise wars, like, there is a historical precedent for corporations that actually have the point where they, like, own land, have private armies, and crap like that. But then I was thinking about the fact, one of my favorite bits of world building about Demolition Man is that they, if they do have contemporary music, we never hear it, but most of the time everyone listens to the oldies station, and the oldies station is just commercials. It's just commercial jingles, and it's so weird because there are places on like TikTok and YouTube where people are discovering like kind of older commercial jingles and doing little dances to them, and I'm like, what are you doing?
That was saying it could get weird. All I say, my point is that it could get weird. Yeah. That's all I say. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry, Matthew. Go ahead on that aside.
yeah. That aside, right? So, now during the dinner at Pizza Taco Hut Bell, right? I like that they bring up a side effect of the whole cryo procedure, right? Where John was actually conscious, even though he was frozen, right? He still remembered the deaths of the hostages at the beginning of the film,
right?
And in particular,
it was a kind of weird, like. It was a kind of weird fever dream kind of thing, and they said they had a weird ethical dimension to the whole crime, right? Because it wasn't like. It wasn't peaceful sleep. To see that.
Exactly. And he even mentions his wife, like, remember his wife pleading to the police, or just like, pretty much tell him to release him from cryo.
Yeah, what he literally says is he remembers his wife beating on the outside of the ICE prison, and I was like, oh my god.
That was a great moment. Just then, the scraps show up in a raid, and it's kind of heartbreaking, but it makes sense in this world, to steal food, right? Because they set up early on that these folks are hungry, right? John drops this dope line in between, like, one of his, like, the big fight that he has with the scraps, where he says, you're gonna regret this for the rest of your life, both seconds of it. I mean, the fight runs much longer than 2 seconds, but it's still a dope line, though. I'll let it slide, right?
So what did he notice first? What was it he noticed? Like something come out of the sewer? What it was? Like a periscope? I forget what it was. Right.
Yeah, it was something that came out. Well, sorry, in the grass itself, like somebody
right.
Compartment or whatever, right? Yeah. And not surprising, given the character of Lenina. Yeah, I mean, she's excited and turned on by John and how he was moving there. And I mean, you saw it like just the moment he came in dressed in the SAPD outfit, right? Yeah, she was crushing him. She was crushing him. Right. So yeah, it took her in a cocktail dress and seeing John, beat the shit out of some scraps, basically. Just to get the little juices flowing, right? So she invites him, over to her crib, and I like how, as I said, Tracy is designed to look like the archetypal 20th century apartment, right? And, we get one of the most memorable moments in the film for me and a lot of people where, I like how it starts off, right? Well, Lenina, because she just loves to over-explain shit, right? Yeah, she just expresses her desire to, like, have sex. And it's just how she just talking about, like, like, I just have these feelings, and blah, blah, blah. And I just love how John responds, like, with you, here, now, oh, yeah. I just love that.
He has this delayed reaction where, like, again, it's like the Taco Bell thing. He kind of needs a moment to process what he's hearing.
Yes. And I mean, talk about like seeing the future ahead, right? So yeah, Lenina shows up with like these like proto VR headsets. Also points for playing the Love Boat to the background, because this is running gag about playing old songs and commercials, right? So they play the team
TV shows, and TV shows,
TV shows, right? So they hit the teams out to Love Boat. That was smart, right? And the process itself is called VIR6 or VIR6 or whatever it is, right?
Right.
And like, I mean, it's weird and trippy, right? But the explanation makes a lot of sense though in the world of San Angeles, right? Whereas like, I mean, no venereal disease, and we are worried about unexpected pregnancies. So we have VIR6, right? That's what it's called.
Right.
I like that.
No, this play really well at the time, because this was at the tail end of the AIDS crisis. So when the film came out, so they play with that conceit, because like, well, not only is AIDS, but AIDS is even we have like about 10 other diseases after this that worse than AIDS, like by far worse.
Yeah.
So nobody should touch anybody. And again, it also plays extra. It also plays extra thing because we're in a post-COVID age now, that kind of stuff. Where there are only people who still look let's be serious. COVID is still a problem for most people, and you have to be careful about that. So you can understand why the virtual reality stuff. And again, it's the 90s. Virtual reality was everywhere, right?
Yeah. There are two things.
People try to bring it back. I'm not sure if it'll work, but we'll see.
No, but Casey Hyde said there's two things in that scene to that same virtual reality thing that had me thinking. One, about a few years ago, I'm trying to remember, I think it might have been Durex who came out with this thing for long distance couples where you are in one part of the world and then another part of the world, and you can still.
That's an absolute thing. Yeah.
That's a
so
thing, yeah.
when I saw that whole VR virtual reality sex scene thing, that is the thing that crossed my mind.
Yeah, exactly.
But also, when she started to give the explanation and all the other stuff that was going on, there's a bit in there where she talks about abortion is legal, and pregnancy is also illegal without a license.
Right.
And when I think about
what she says, and it actually makes her. Well, she was talking about it, and it actually like the way she said it was really funny because what she said was like she said she was listing all these things that are illegal, and she said, "Well, so is abortion, but since you can't get pregnant without a license anyway, it doesn't really matter." And it was like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah. So slowly but surely, the iceberg started
catching up.
Yeah, you start to see the iceberg of this world started like sipping now because again, the average person wouldn't know, and by design they can't know. Like it's just this really get to see how dystopic everything is though. Like, that's good world building. Sorry. That's why the movie works for me.
So right afterwards, well, John goes to, his apartment because, Lenina hooked him up, right? And, that's where we get the moment where he put on just basically put on the screen to check the security this thing, and that's where he saw the new woman who, I think it was like a missed call or something like that. That was a nice little bit. I like that, right?
Yeah, right.
And I kind of a blink and you miss a moment where he just starts like knitting. I guess one of those things that when I see it, all right, why is he doing this?
Right.
But like that in the following scene in the morning after, he's like, I now know how to do, I know now how to knit and all that. And just touching on this casting again, I like that you're playing it on, it's the tough action hero, but I'm doing something that's feminine in quotes, like knit, like knitting.
Right.
I love that. That's nice.
Speaking about the comedy of this bit, I just love, obviously Wesley Snipes, phenomenal, Sylvester Stallone, phenomenal, everyone else in the cast, phenomenal, but given that she hadn't had any of her biggest hits yet, can we talk about just how phenomenal Sandra Bullock is in this movie?
Yeah.
Her comic timing and her performances are just spot on, spot on, and she didn't really have much, and I was just checking, Speed, which cemented her as for action films, and then How You Were Sleeping, which started her rom-com journey, both came after this movie. So this was her big discovery. And what I love about the sex scene in particular is that it ends with, and I made a note of the quote, which was like, "You are a savage creature, John Spartan, and I wish for you to leave my domicile now." And then she does a little foot stomp.
Yeah.
When she points and points with her whole arm.
Yes.
Sells that bit so funny.
She was great at that. She was great at that. Yeah, so so on the morning of when he's talking about he can knit and whatnot, they decide to give Raymond a visit because they realize that Raymond's up to no good, right? Yes. And basically it's Raymond isn't even in that same room that we saw earlier on with those monolith screens or whatever it is, right? But there's a great moment where you see Raymond on all the screens, right? And he's talking to John, right? And, John being John, he fires at a majority of them. I think he leaves two of them untouched, right? But there's one that the camera zooms in. And it's one of those moments that, I had to rewind. I was like, holy shit, they actually do this? So Raymond is talking down to John, right? And speaking of that, just on a side note, right? I I know for some people they might not like the whole, oh, why you calling, John a caveman and Cro-Magnon, like, how much prehistoric terms you could use to describe this man, right? But I just love, like, just from the societal view of the film itself, it could, how these people who feel they're better than everybody could look at somebody like John and, oh, look at you relic from the past, you caveman, look at you know what I mean? But that's Rima just doing it again, like, just berating him, right? And then you just see off screen, just a gun that shows up at his head, and it just cuts to Raymond at his actual office and John with the gun at his head. I was like, wow, that is brilliant direction, that is brilliant editing. I love that. That's so great, right? As you guys mentioned earlier with that whole dispenser thing, so even in an intense scene like that, yes, John is cursing up a storm and he's just saying, oh, he's been fine, blah, 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 right? But I just love how Raymond just pretty much just chases him out of the office and says, before he says that, he pretty much orders Lenina to take John back to SCPD, to the cryo place and freeze him back again. So Raymond orders him out to the office and said, be well. And John says, be fucked, and shoots at the dispenser. I love that. That's like another great mic drop moment. I don't know if you guys have anything to say about that scene.
That scene in general, is perfectly fine. So I didn't have an issue with it. But the thing that I was thinking about is the way how Couture, or however his name is pronounced, Dr. Couture, did the... Oh, right. So the way how he was able to not have Simon shoot him, I was expecting him to do that to all the prisoners. So, like, the idea of even John being able to even level the gun at his head the way how it was, and even at the end when he fires it and the assistant associate Bob falls down, like, I sat on there and studied, it would have been made a little bit more, like, if I was the creator of that world, I would make sure that every prisoner, because you could never tell who will come out with a vendetta, so have that implanted in them that you can't harm the people at the top who actually builds this system. Sense. Yeah.
And the workaround for that is clever when Simon Phoenix does it, which is funny.
When
that comes up, it's like, that's real hard.
Which gonna get to, right? So John wisely does he want and the SAPD couldn't and didn't want to do. Go into the sewers to find Simon, right? Of course, Alfredo and Lenina tag along, right? And much to my surprise, just looking back at the film, it's like an actual society living there now. Okay, it's like a gang now. It's a small gang, but no, it's like a society, right? Again, very Moloch-like, right?
Yes.
So at the same time, this was 93, right?
Yes.
Forget which episode this was. There's an episode of DS9.
Okay.
That does a similar conceit where it's just, basically it's the idea of and this was going on in the mid-90s, basically the idea of in Los Angeles, these districts that just used to put poor people in it and isolate them, and it's effectively like open air, concentration camps more or less. That's what it is. That's the social commentary. It's not that far from what's going on. Yeah, go ahead.
The Bell Riots.
Right, the Bell Riots episode and thing. But there's a similar... But the thing is, the real shit was going on. Again, sci-fi writers and these guys not predicting the future, really. We've seen shit now and then project it. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And this was a whole thing about the whole gentrification. Poor people can't keep up. A whole bunch of people, and the system just collapsing on its own right now. And they make it really work in terms of this. Oh, yeah, everybody... simple rules of thumb, there's a bunch of people speaking Spanish. How come?
Right, exactly.
So on and so forth, right? And there's all these little things, right? And I say there are no cows down here, which is fun.
Right, that's what I was going to bring up, right? Because for me, I saw this as sort of like a blink and you miss it time machine reference, right? Because these people making burgers and shit, right? So I love how they set up to it. What's that god awful smell? Oh, I was like, what's? John is like, oh yeah, it's a burger, right? So you pay for a burger, right? And Lenina says, don't ask where the meat comes from. Do you see any cows around here? So at first, what I heard is like, oh, it's like Morlocks, right? Because remember, I think Morlocks, were they cannibals in the original story? I assume so, because they used to go after the people on top and bring them down. I assume maybe they're not cannibals, but that's how I saw it, right? But actually, it's rat meat, right? Which is way better than human flesh, right? Yeah. So let's talk for a bit about Dennis Leary, right? You know, Edgar Friendly, right? Now, I'm not going to call him one of the greatest actors of all time or greatest comedians of all time. But I thought that his monologue was fantastic, Dred, right?
So, he was also, in my humble opinion, again, I get to look back at this because I suppose at the time this would have been great, but he was one of the weaker links of the film to me. Because they try to frame him as this leader of the resistance thing. And
but he's not no leader.
Exactly, leader, but he's just a stand-up comedian. That's what it was, and he just played himself, like pretty much. Okay. He just doing a stand-up routine, and I think he's a funny comedian there. But like, and I suppose again, it's the early '90s. Stand-up comedy was huge. Like,
of course, yeah.
Huge. Like it was, still pretty big. It had a lot of big stars. HBO was now blowing up to put out stand-up specials. So yeah, Dennis Leary doing his bits.
Yeah.
It worked in the film.
It did, and for me, it's a great monologue. I guess it's not deep, right? But I like the idea that. Hey, it's just an everyman American who just want these simple things in life, and I can worry about my health, and you can tell me I can't eat this, but no, it's my choice. That's what I want to do. It's my freedom as an American, right? And that's how he just says it just right off the gate, like, I want to do this, and just don't give a shit. I just want to do this, right? But I can't do that when you're up when I'm above ground, right? But it does bring up a little nitpick for me, right? Where all right, so just because they can't do these things, that's why they're really forced to hide in the sewers. But then again, when you think about it, Cocteau now is the guy who would thaw a guy like Simon out of cryosleep to go after these guys and pretty much kill them, right? So you can kind of understand why they're there. Because at first it's like a huge stretch, like, well, if it's the simple stuff you want in life, then why are you living down here, though? Like, why are you going through all this drama?
No, that's the whole point about Cocteau. He's just very paternalistic. It's that world he built is perfect. Paternalistic. Yeah, again, is he again Huxley, right? No surprise, right? As CC brought up earlier. It's that world. I think the reason why I brought it up too is because it's not like Cocteau has like this paramilitary who's going and hunting every rebel and killing them. It's not like that. It's just everything up here is clean, but I kind of want to get these people. I want to get rid of them, but I don't want to tarnish the clean image. That's what I'm saying. No, it's as I say, it's the gentrification stuff. It's the slow wiping out of our people and our culture and whatever it is now. Because they're not looking good. They're not looking thing. They might be, the skin color might be a little too dark for you, and all these little aesthetic choices over time. And he want to carry it to next level now. With his ultimate plan, blah blah blah. But they make it work. Like it's what the subtext is. As I said, he's basically OCP in one person, effectively.
Yes.
Like this whole. You're making this perfect society. And it's a utopic nightmare, effectively. They make it work. Simple science fiction conceit, we see it many times, but they do it reasonably well here in the context of the world.
Okay,
go ahead. Yeah.
Right. So, meanwhile, Simon assembles a team of thawed out criminals, right? Because Cocteau made he made that hookup, right? Yeah.
Joker gets his henchmen.
Yes. Right. And for some reason, they get women for them because, of course, for the criminals, you have to have those women who stroke in their heads, right? I find that was kind of funny, right?
You need somebody to sit on a lap.
Yeah, that's because, right? And Simon is doing his rallying speech, and that's where you hear, the kind of Batman Forever-esque music at that moment in particular. Like, I noticed that. It's like, it has that kind of that kind of circus vibe to it, in a sense, right? Speaking of Cocteau, right? There's some moments involving him at his own place, right? That's his home. Where you see like this large fireplace, right? Where I couldn't help but be reminded of Blade Runner, especially that scene where Roy Batty, that would be Rutger Hauer, confronts Tyrell, right?
Right.
And it's in a similar room, and you're seeing like
very similar, and
you see the fireplace in the back and how everything is lit like that. So it's kind of like that, right? Where Cocteau is the creator of this monster. Because remember, he pretty much, through the rehab program, feed him all this information on how to, just basically be a all-around terrorist, right? A super soldier. And I mean, Simon is subject, right? That's what it is, right? So like, all right, sure, I see you. I see the little Blade Runner reference. Say, okay, that's cool. But but just back to John, right? Because John is still in the sewers, right? But like for me, I felt like John didn't really think his plan all the way through because Simon is the same area that he is, and surprise, Simon spots him and Friendly, and he just start blasting them, right? Simon escapes.
Ooh, the presser one.
Yes. Simon escapes. And this is great bit. It's kind of on the nose, but I like it, right? Where earlier on, John and Lenina noticed this 1970 Oldsmobile, right? And there was like this elevator shaft there.
Right.
I felt the show kind of like shown that instead of like doing the action scene or whatever. But yeah, so he activated the elevator shaft to leave the sewers. And like it's literally right underneath this Oldsmobile dealership. So the elevator just burst straight from the floor. I'm like, wow, boy, I love the news, but I get it. I get what you're saying, right? And yeah, in the elevator, they have the car, and then, well, yeah, of course, that gives John an excuse, just to drive through the dealership and go after John, right?
So, last car, right? Yeah.
Go classic 90s.
Yeah,
there's a bit in it. I was just studying, there's a bit in it, I think that might have been just before, or sometime before, where Simon was inside the cryo area. And he's looking at the list of criminals that they have there. And he says, because I wrote it down, Jeffrey Dahmer is here too? That guy.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's near the end of the film. Yeah. Which we'll get into, right?
It's like, oh my God, man.
Yeah, but yeah, you know, we get this pretty sweet car chase between, John and Simon.
The future car is a great design,
that would be Lenina's police car because, Simon steals it. Is it Tesla? Is it Tesla-esque?
No, it looks like a Tesla.
I'm saying cute Tesla.
I'm sure it isn't, but...
Right.
Yeah, like pre-Tesla. I got it right. I mean, it's action film, right? So yeah, Simon in villain trope, is a villain trope, have to reveal that the 20 hostages from 96 were actually dead before John even arrived. Right. It's that I'm gonna beat you, and oh, by the way, you know what I mean? So yeah, John didn't cause them deaths, right? Simon is thrown out of the car, and in a great bit, John escapes death because the car itself is activated and to crash into SCPD headquarters. But thankfully, John, is alive, right? And that's back to Cocteau for the last time, right? Because Simon goes back to Cocteau's crib, right? I love that, just because he can't kill Cocteau. I like there's a moment where he tries to do it, and he's like, and he's like, God damn it, right? Yeah, he does get when he goes to do it. Just 3 shots. Exactly. I like, brilliant. I love it. Just don't waste no time because the movie almost done. Yeah, just 3 shots. Boom, that's it, right?
It's great. It's good. Go ahead, Tracy.
Go.
No, I was about to say it ducks the trope that I normally hate in action movies, where you have the much more physically intimidating bad guy that spends most of the movie fighting the good guy, and then towards the end they get taken out pretty early, and so the quote unquote final boss is the not as cool secondary villain, but thankfully they flipped that in a great way, and so I think I would have definitely knocked the movie down a couple points if final boss round.
You don't necessarily have to do it.
Cocktail, I was like, no,
you don't have to do the RoboCop thing where it's the corporate guy who dies at the end. You don't need to do that.
Right.
Nah, man.
Well, it's very similar to RoboCop. There's the subvert RoboCop with the whole not shooting thing. Same idea.
Yeah.
They come out with a workaround. Similar idea. Yeah. That's it.
Right. So at the same time, go on, Tracy.
No, because I was watching it and I was thinking that maybe he was going to do some kind of random surgery or something to kind of take whatever chip out of his brain.
Right.
But the idea of him just turning to, the henchman and be like, just kill this bastard.
Yeah, it's a low-tech solution. Yeah. It's a simple low-tech solution. And fun.
Yeah.
It's funny.
It is funny in a dark way, but it absolutely works, right? Yeah. At the same time, John and Lenina and the Scraps, the Scraps decided to team up with them. Go after Simon and in particular Cocteau as well. And for some reason, Alfredo joined the group because reasons. That was kind of weird to me, but whatever, right? But
he found his true calling.
Yeah,
right. It's again, another comedy bit. Yeah.
It's just so sudden. That's more one gripe. It's a little too sudden, but whatever, right? Yeah, and of course, you get an action sequence in the building itself. Lenina gets to kick some ass. In one moment, she kicks a guy 3 times in the balls. I'm like, oof, god damn, right? And she also shoots a guy. I love her reaction to it as well. It's like, oh wow, that's how it feels to shoot a guy, right? I love that, right?
Yeah.
And there's a nice little bit where John asks her, where you learn moves like that? And she say, Jackie Chan movies. It's like, nice shout out. I like that, right?
Yes.
I like that.
Again with this world.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel sorry for the people back in 93 who did not know who Jackie Chan was. You know, because I know that he did work in the 80s, like he was in an American film called The Protector, and he was dissatisfied with that film, right? But it's only like in '95 now where he really like restarted that whole American run with Rumble in the Bronx, right? But I assume back then people saw Super Cop, as in, you know, Police Stories 3. I assume people saw it then, and I guess that's the reference that they make there with this film. I'm assuming, right? Anywho. So, John and Lenina uncover Simon's master plan, which is pretty much defrost all the other criminals, 80 to be exact, including Jeffrey Dahmer, and pretty much overthrow San Angeles. That makes a lot of sense, right?
Simple plot.
Simple plot. It makes sense, right? Yeah. But
that is the watch the whole world burn kind of part of it. You know, this town deserves a better classic criminal.
Yes. Yes. And, you know, smart call with John because of how inexperienced, admittedly, Lenina is in the field. Yeah, John knocks Lenina out with the glow stick thing, right? Yeah, he does that, right? Yeah. The glow rod, sorry, right? So I'm not gonna go into full details about the final confrontation between John and Simon. But it is so delightfully over the top. It just perfectly sums up for me why the 90s were the best decade for action cinema, boy. There's explosions, there's sparks, there's smoke machines, there's bullets, there's punches, there's kicks. And of course...
They do this... It's a final fight scene. It's a final fight scene with several, like... sub-stories and moments within it in a way that makes it really engaging. Like, I feel like a lot of final fights will just be like one extended scene, but they're like, no, first this part happens, then that ends, and then we switch to this, and we switch to that. And then my favorite part is we get to the final very end where Simon, like, you know, they're fighting, and then Simon gets, as I said earlier, he gets tired of toying with him, or like, you know, Spartan gets in a few hits too many, like, oh, okay, now we're actually going, and then they get like real up close and personal. Like, they don't have guns, they don't have any of the fancy tech, and they're just up close and personal and at their most nasty, and that part is so brutal. Like, that part is so brutal.
I wish I saw this film back in '93. I would have like lost my shit when I saw the scene for the first time because of just how over the top it is, right? But is how they reference the first action sequence, right? Because if you remember, Simon had a blowtorch, right? And he had kerosene on the floor. Well, gasoline on the floor, sorry. Yeah. So in this case now, it's, you know, the whole cryo stuff on the floor or whatnot, right? And John, you know, has this broken, you know, piece. Well, this canister, if you will. I think that's what it is, right? And he hits the floor and it freezes Simon. Yeah. And John swings and kicks Simon's head off. And you remember from the beginning where they said about, you know, the head being attached, and I'm like, wow, boy, wow. And then, well, John once again runs up before the place explodes, but in this case, it's not the entire building that's go down, it's just the cryo prison. So yeah, technically all the criminals inside there are dead. And we don't care because it's just a glorious explosion.
To them.
Whatever, all of them are dead. Jeffrey Dahmer is dead. Or is he? I don't know. Maybe we'll get a sequel and he's alive. I don't know. Whatever.
Oh God.
I would hate a legacy sequel to this so much.
Unless it was, you don't need to make one.
Yeah.
Maybe
CC, you should direct it.
Like I would trust it to someone like James Gunn. If it had to be made, I could see that. But yeah, I'll make it, sure.
Yeah, but you guys have anything else to weigh in on just how gloriously over the top that action sequence is, the final one?
Yeah, it's classic 90s shit, but they make it work. Totally hard. Like, really, really well done and funny.
It is, yeah. It is funny at the same time. Just how grandiose it is, right? It totally works, right? So yeah, as the show wraps up, you know, while the cops and the scraps, they work out a compromise. And you know, Earl warms up to John. It's like, hey, you know, you were the guy who, well, pretty much he finds out that John did stop the guy, as in Simon, who killed Cocteau. It's like, all right, cool. And even Associate Bob offers his services to help Friendly clean up his, well, image, right? I like that.
Associate Bob is a classic politician.
Yeah.
Right. So I think last kind of point. I think if I remember correctly, they had some stuff with his daughter that they think they cut. I can't remember.
Oh, well, because
really?
They mentioned that John had a daughter. What happened is that when John was when he was asked about his daughter, Earl comes and say, oh, well, you know, as much as we want to have this family reunion, you know what I mean? we toured you out for a reason. So he actually cuts the conversation short, right? But yeah, I felt that we could have gotten a little bit more of the daughter.
I think that was either a cut scene in the script or something like that. Because for years, a lot of people a lot of fans theorized that Huxley was his daughter, and it's like, no, the timeline don't add up there.
That would be very odd.
Well, just to touch on that briefly, I thought we would have had that a bit kind of similar to what's the show, The Rock. Where, in between the action, our hero kind of stopped to find his child, right? I thought we'd have gotten that.
Right.
But my assumption is that she died in the earthquake of 2010. That's my assumption, along with her mother. That's my assumption.
So I remember, I read something somewhere that she's still alive, but the mother died, but she's still alive somewhere. But I don't think but she's not living in San Angeles. Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say they do set it up, like the whole bit where like he has them. I had a wife. She died in the big one, and he's like my daughter. Like that's in action movies. That's set up. Like that is absolute. And I am curious what the original scene is.
There's a scene in the car with Huxley where she says it's a minor police infraction, but I can do, like, she was going to do a search and he stopped her because they were heading to
okay so quick
to increase
so quick correction. I think she was supposed to be a scrap, but they cut that.
That would have been interesting.
And to be connected to Edgar Friendly.
But the problem with that now is, one, how old will she be? And I have a feeling that she probably would have replaced Edgar Friendly, or she would have been tied to him or something. So,
well, the idea, I think the idea was that she was either in a relationship with Edgar Friendly or like his right-hand man kind of thing, like working in the resistance, something like that, if I remember correctly.
Like John Connor and Sarah Connor kind of something.
Right.
Yeah, but to the show's credit, it probably would have stopped the film clear in its tracks.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Right, I agree with that. Yeah.
Like the film is a pretty good pacing the way it's made. Like the way it's cut and with what scenes they kept in, it keeps a pretty relentless pace going, and it's pretty good. Like I mean, I do think the film has its quiet moments. I love the little scene where like John's just walking around his apartment by himself, and just like something about that scene and how quiet it is, I really appreciate. But like you need a lot more than just like two scenes to make that actually feel like a satisfying payoff. Like you need a lot more material than honestly there would have like been otherwise, or completely rewrite the Huxley plot and make it like a revelation thing, but then you'd have to cut the sex parts out.
Right.
But like,
you had to cut the jokes out.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
And last thing last, of course, the hero gets a girl in the end. He kisses her and she kisses him. And all is right in the world, man. And that's where our story ends, right? So in closing, that's just final thoughts on the film. This was a blast recapping this, though. It's one of those things that you just hear for years about how clever it is. And yes, it is, right? It's not as intelligent as, say, Blade Runner, and it's not as brutally satiric as RoboCop, right? No, it didn't need to be, right? And I say this too because, a lot of people might go into this recapping this and be like, oh my God, this was so ahead of its time and blah, blah, blah. And it is, right? But it's not like, the most intelligent sci-fi movie out there, right? Like, again, you're not going to get Blade Runner with this, right? It knows what it is and it sticks it, right? But really what makes it work, though, is just the three leads themselves. With Wesley Snipes, taking the MVP award here because, he kills it as Simon Phoenix, so, right? Not just with the action scenes, but he sells the comedy, he sells the... Well, even though they don't play into it too much, but you could still buy into him being this psychopath, right? But he's not like, oh my God, I should be scared of him, even though... Just like slight little nitpick. Yeah, they do kind of hammer the point that, oh, he's so evil and psychotic. And then when you see him like, yeah, he killed some guys and he kicked some guys in the ass, but he's not that bad. I mean, he's not that bad. Well, like that, right?
Well, he's pretty bad.
He's bad. He's not terrifying.
He take out a man eye with a pen. I mean, it's...
Yeah, but what I mean, like, it's not like, oh my God, I should be scared of him every time I see him on screen, right?
Right.
And that just is, that's thanks to just the charisma that Wesley has, man. I mean, he just kills. Easily one of the best performances he's ever done. Even though for me, his best performance for me will always be Nino Brown from New Jack City, but that's just me, right? Stallone, right? I like that he's doing something a little bit different from what, he's typecast as, right? I mean, yes, he is the burly, tough badass, but I like the whole fish out of water scene, moments with him. And yes, he doesn't play the straight man all that well though, but he plays within his strengths. He's quite believable as, I just, like, I'm a cop. I do this, right? But you guys are telling me y'all don't do this and y'all don't know what a 187 is and what's going on here and all that kind of stuff. So I like that, you do buy into his reactions to just seeing all this weird shit, right? Mm-hmm. Sandra Bullock kills it as well too. I just love her naivety in this and just how wide-eyed she is to, like, all this stuff, the stuff in the past and how fascinated she is by the 20th century and all that kind of stuff. And just when she's just throwing all these, like, oh, this is what we do here and all that kind of stuff. It's so funny, but it works, right? The story itself is very well told though. Again, it's not like some like some perfectly written sci-fi or anything like that, right? But it gives you the goods, right? I love how they flesh out the world of this. It's believable in a sense. It's logical in a sense, even though it's kind of absurd at the same time. And, the references to stuff like Taco Bell and, the Three Seashells, all that kind of stuff absolutely work as well, right? The action sequences are great as well, just so over the top. And for me, it just reminded me of just why we just enjoyed action films in the 90s, especially sci-fi action films as well, right? But yeah, the comedy also works as well too, because yeah, you really should look at it as an action comedy as well, even though the two prominent genres will be sci-fi and action, but yeah, there's a comedic element in this as well that absolutely works as well, right?
Massive comedic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And overall, I would say, yeah, this is probably one of the most enjoyable action films to come out of the 90s, right? It is a product of its time, yes, I will admit that, right? Yes. But it's just so fun rewatching it. It just took me back to the glory days of just 90s action cinema. Just, where every year you could look forward to at least one Schwarzenegger or one Stallone or one Bruce Willis movie. And yeah, one Seagal movie and one Van Damme movie, right? So yeah, it was 90s action cinema at its peak though. And it's just amazing seeing where this film fits, right? And just looking at its evolution up until 1999 when The Matrix, which is Ricardo's pick for best action film of all time, and how that changed things, leading forward, right? But yeah, for me, I have this here as a guilty pleasure movie. I could just watch this with a dumb smile on my face with all the references, like with the Schwarzenegger Presidential Library and just be like, yep, this is the 90s. I love this stuff, right? So yeah, for me, rating wise, as a guilty pleasure movie, strong 4 out of 5. Happy 30th anniversary. Be well. And I could see this movie, holding up 10 years from now, man. So yeah, Ricardo, your final thoughts and rating.
Yeah, exactly. 10 years from now when the actual film happened. Because it was 2032.
Exactly.
Oh, Lord. Yes.
Yeah, that's going to be an event.
Yeah, I thoroughly love this film. It's a movie that again, I don't think it's as sharp as RoboCop or anything like that, or even any of the other Verhoevens or anything like that. But it's up there, and it's a shockingly smarter script than I remember giving it credit for.
Right?
It just appreciate all the little jokes, references. They make it work, and everything comes together. As I said, it have a couple weak links, mostly Stallone. And you kind of saw this with his Judge Dredd, which was kind of a mess. But he
sorry to cut you there, Ricardo, right? But I couldn't help but notice the Judge Dredd, kind of pre-Judge Dredd vibe. Like, case in point, the costumes, the SCP costumes look kind of Judge Dreddish. The scraps themselves and where they are kind of Judge Dreddish.
Right. Yeah, and then, of course, and Rob Schneider.
Yes, I am the law. Right? I just appreciate it for what it is. Like, it is a genuinely, like, to me, funny and charming movie. Could it have been punched up a little bit? Yeah, a little bit. You could have done a couple of little tweaks here or there for the most part. But I find, all things considered, set design and production and everything just kind of flows and comes together reasonably well. And yeah, it's a movie that I remember enjoying back then, and I enjoy it more now because of all of the futurisms that they make. They make interesting calls that turns out surprisingly prophetic, right? Or prescient for the most part. And they make it work. Yeah, love this movie. Enjoy. Rating, I'd probably give it like a low 8 out of 10, probably closer to a 7, But yeah, it's a movie that, again, because everything comes together so well for action sequence, it action comedy, sci-fi action comedy, everything
piece together. Yeah, about 8, but probably within the 7 range, probably like around like 8. Yeah, low 8, like around that.
All right, fair enough. Tracy, your final thoughts, and then of course we have to end with CC, because I just love to end things with CC, right? So yeah, Tracy, your final thoughts.
To end things with CC.
Yes, because you love these films more than we do. Like, like we just looking back, like wow, wow, this was so ahead of its time. But you're like, oh my god, this is so amazing. That's what
you rambled a bit, and they ramble a bit. That's why.
Yeah, they do. But yeah, Tracy, your final thoughts and ratings.
Well, let's talk about this. The one thing I don't think I really needed at all was at the end when he does get the girl and the flames and everything. There is "Demolition Man" by Sting.
Oh, that's the song that plays. Oh, okay.
That ends it, and I remember listening to it. This is not Bond. It's not that kind of. It's not Bond. I don't necessarily. And Sting. I mean, you get a character, you get a musician like Sting. For me, this movie gets a solid B. B for me. I would even say A- because I was legitimately smiling all the way through this movie. I felt really good watching this movie, and I did that thing where I sat down afterwards watching the credits to see. Because when you're in the credits, you get to see people whose careers may have grown or whatever it is like that. And I just sat down there kind of casually watching through the credits, and there it was, first assistant director, Louis D'Esposito, who, I mean, in terms of the Marvel Big Three, every time you see executively produced by, it's Kevin Feige, Victoria Alonso, and Louis D'Esposito, or Luis. D'Esposito. So the idea of him being the first assistant director for Demolition Man, I was like, oh my god, this is just great. For me, again, coming back to what I was saying at the beginning, this is Batman and Joker. This is Batman Beyond, Return of the Joker. Right. The hypnotic suggestions and everything like that, I remember thinking this has a little flair of Manchurian in it. I liked that as a construct. I liked seeing the two of them paired together. I feel like for me, because everybody was so comedic and over the top, even if we looked at Stallone as not necessarily being comedic, I feel like his straight face adds a whole lot of dimension to it, and I enjoyed it a great deal. I love this movie. Will I watch it again anytime soon? More than likely. I have a whole thing played up there with like 90s movies, so that's going to go inside there, and I'm going to go back to it at any given point in time. I think it was a movie that again showed the versatility of the 90s, because while we were there sitting down talking, I did this thing where I just checked out movies that came out in 1993, and that was the same year that we got The Fugitive, Sleepless in Seattle, The Firm, and Free Willy, and Philadelphia.
Oh yeah, right there, that's true.
See, that list of films that you're seeing there, and again, we want to go back to the idea of original filmmaking as opposed to just grinding every IP that's there. That worked for me. So I am 100% on board with Demolition Man. Benjamin Bratt cussing at the end because he found his people and he's like, able to use his free speech is hilarious. So that adds something to it. But for me, a B or an A-. Love this movie. It was good sitting down and watching it again.
Nice. And CC, close things off.
Oh boy. Yes. It's funny because I think I'm the only dissenting opinion because I don't like 90s action normally. 90s action for me, especially kind of like, this is earlier 90s, but like late 90s in particular as we're getting into the 2000s, kind of has a problem with any human drama gets kind of lost within the bombast and the spectacle a little bit. And it's become so over the top that like any sense of humanity, any sense of character kind of gets drowned out a little bit by just the sheer excess of everything going on. But for some reason, this movie is the exception to that for me. Like for some reason, as I think it's because for me, the excesses all like, first of all, the drama is never lost because the drama that there is, mainly Simon Phoenix versus John Spartan, is played up so theatrically and so over the top, it matches how over the top everything else is. It's a similar trick to what John Woo does with his American films, where, you know, the action is big and bombastic, but the drama is also big and bombastic and everything like that. Learning that this is written by the guy who wrote one of my other favorite comedies just kind of adds to it all. Makes it, okay, that makes complete sense, because this film does have Heather's penchant for smart writing, larger than life characters, almost caricatures, but still moments of there's the genuine moments of empathy that kind of surprise you, and the same thing I mentioned earlier of being self-aware. And I think this film succeeds where a film like maybe Last Action Hero came out the same year kind of struggles a little bit more. It succeeds at being a self-aware action movie because it plays everything so over the top, and that's where the comedy comes in. It's not referencing the tropes, it's playing the tropes to these over the top ways. It's so, and like, there's new things I laugh at every time I watch it. There's things that I just realized that it just clicked with me were really funny, even like talking here and hearing what everyone else was laughing to. I was like, oh yeah, that bit was really funny. I think like the premise is, obviously, if you're looking for like, you know, smart sci-fi or whatever, there's more intelligent sci-fi, but I think I think what makes this work is that it's smarter than it has any right to be. I think is the thing for me that I appreciate the most. It's smarter than a lot of other like kind of sci-fi action films at the time. Like if you think about something like Universal Soldier, which I compared it to earlier, a movie I do like, and that for me is like a 8 or 7 out of 10. But it's also a movie where you think about the science or the sci-fi too much. It's like, okay, sure, it works until it doesn't. But then a movie like this works a lot better than it has any right to. Like there's so much that's clever about the world, there's so much that's clever about the way the world is written. It's just clever enough to carry all the action. But again, the action itself only works because the characters and the drama and the comedy work so well. This is one of my all-time favorite action movies. Like, it's easily one of my favorite like action comedies, but it is up there for me as far as my favorite action movies of all time, because it is effortlessly revisitable. And rather than just the kind of pure action that I do prefer when I prefer action, like, you know, someone like John Woo again, it has enough of the action comedy and the sci-fi and just how weird it is. It goes back to Tracy's point about how this was one of the last decades where we actually had a truly diverse box office, and you could have a wide variety of films playing at the same time, and they weren't considered like competition to each other. And like, it's really weird. This is a weird movie. It's a movie that's dropping references to classic sci-fi literature and movies. It's a movie that creates a very strange, almost alienating movie, but the character we're supposed to fit in with is himself not like a character that's like the most relatable all the time, but we kind of understand the like deadpan fish out of water humor. This is, for me, like, depending on the day, this is a 10 out of 10. Some days it's mostly like okay, I could see that as like a 9, but like, just off pure enjoyment, just off like how much fun and how much mileage I get out of it, and how influential it is on me personally when I write and when I create, especially when I think about action and like kind of what I aim for. This is an absolute masterpiece and a personal favorite, like, for me, and definitely one of the best action films of the 90s.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you so much for being part of this celebration of of Demolition Man and San Angeles and the chicanery there and Simon Phoenix and John Spartan, right? You know what I mean? So yeah, it was fun, man. It was fun. And it was great recapping that film, and it was great talking to you guys about it, right? So yeah. And yeah, that's pretty much about it. So once again, guys, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whenever you're listening to this. This was Matthew Bailey, and be well, Ricardo Medina.
Yeah. Hello.
Right? Be well, CC.
Better get on those 3 seashells.
And of course, be well, Tracy. Now I got the chance to tell you. Yeah, be well, Tracy.
Be well, Sir Bailey, and remember to enjoy your rat burgers.
Yes. And this has been another episode of BBB Radio /Retrospect Reviews. So until next one, take care, stay safe in and out, send a maniac to catch a maniac. Peace.